Superficially, we associate performance with big distances in cross-country flying, busting acro moves, and competitive risk-taking. But for me, performance is the result of years of practice and commitment. Even this DVD in no way can replace this apprenticeship of flight, and our experts will be the first to admit that there is always room for learning. It's now time, not just for an update of my previous films, but also an addition. Security in flight and speed to fly are for pilots of all levels. This film highlights the qualities needed to become a true performance pilot. Watching the following experts is captivating in itself, and for some viewers, this thrill might be the only purpose of this DVD. For those of you who are aspiring and advanced pilots, we hope this film conveys some of the highest levels of skill in flying today. Together with the team at Ozone, we're going to show you the maximum potential of your glider. Using split-screen imagery and our high-speed camera, we will demonstrate the correct timing, brake range, and weight shift in detail never seen before. Welcome to Cloud Base. Over the past few years, glider design and pilot techniques in both cross-country flying and in acro have come on in leaps and bounds. So together with the boys at Ozone, going to various places around the world, we're going to show you just what improvements have been made. A performance flyer is a well-rounded pilot with a combination of skills in cross-country, SIV and acro. Watch the following pilots for their expertise in all three of these categories. But do bear in mind, this is an educational DVD. We are showing you how it's done, but please approach it with a responsible attitude. Practice, practice, practice. Always work with people that know what they're doing and that can give you the right advice, and always train over water until you're very comfortable with the moves. But the boys at Ozone know their stuff, and it's going to be fantastic showing you exactly how to do the moves. You don't have to fly a performance wing to be a performance pilot. On the contrary, it's important to be in full control of the wing in all conditions. You should be excited and confident about using the full brake range, weight shift and speed bar of your wing. I've been flying around a bit, and for this film I'm going to fly a DHV-12 glider just to demonstrate that great flights can be achieved on relatively safe wings. First, I'm going to take you on a cross-country flight incorporating both mountain and flatland thermaling. To help illustrate the additional techniques and ideas, I'll be joined by Sandy Cochpin, Russell Ogden and Jerome Canot, who will all contribute their pearls of wisdom from their favourite sites around the world.
The most important thing for cross-country flying is not losing your glider.
Whether you fly on your local hills or in the Siberian Altai Mountains, cross-country flying is almost a spiritual experience. For me, breaking the link with the takeoff, with the security and safety of takeoff and heading off into the unknown, is the most uplifting thing about cross-country flying. And once you've mastered it with time and practice, you'll join this community of like-minded people and travel the world, experiencing different cultures and flying over magnificent landscapes. At this point in your flying career, you know the value of preparation, and you don't spend precious brain power fiddling around with your batteries in flight. Before even going up the mountain, prepare and research, visualising your optimum route, getting detailed weather reports, and making sure your gear is all sorted. No performance pilot shuffles around on takeoff. If you're going to launch in strong winds, you must practice a personal, rock-solid technique, be it the standard reverse, sea riser, or concertina launch. Focus on the launch, and you should have a completely calm and predictable presence on takeoff, no matter what the size of the launch, the wind, or the crowd. If the day's blown out, then find a safe field and go and practice. Similarly, no performance pilot sends pedestrians diving for cover on landing.
Excuse me!
Make sure your landing skills mature in pace with your flying, and discipline yourself and practice spot landing on every touchdown. Learn how to land on slopes and be confident with getting the glider into tight spots. Confidence and skill on launch and landing are the essence of performance flying. Here we are at 6,000 feet on the summit of Paragliding in Turkey. We've arrived nice and early so that we can prepare ourselves for a good flight ahead. You can see the cloud base is quite low, and that's going to rise as the day gets better and break through inversions. So all we're doing now is we're prepared, we're watching the conditions, and the minute it gets good, we're off. Meanwhile, at the same time, Sandy is preparing to launch from her favourite spot in Chamonix.
I think it's very important just to feel the evolution of the day to do a morning fly, because like that you will be able to judge if it's a stable day or if it's unstable, if you will have bubbles or real thermals, and this will drive you to the way you will have to go in the thermal.
Our intention is to take our time, get to base around here, and then when we're ready, go on a glide onto the next mountain, which is Mendos, top up to base there, glide across into the main valley and connect with Akda. From there, hopefully we can extend along the North Range all the way towards Denizli.
I would say the first step is to be good at takeoff and very precise on landing, so that you can land anywhere without windsocks. And the second step, I would say, is to have material which is adapted to your level. Most of the people we see flying cross-country got some glider which are too performance for them, and they just use 20% of the glider, and they are in danger most of the time. Hello, welcome in Chamonix Valley! Takeoff from the UTV, now takeoff just behind us. And now we are doing ridge soaring on the UTV. You can see Honduras just behind. It's great. I'm always saying go flying at 8, go flying at 9. When the pilot arrive here to do cross country at 11 o'clock, they are still at takeoff. I say, what are you doing here? You should be in the air already. 1 hour earlier, 2 hours earlier. Even if you burn out, you will work the small thermals. Then maybe you go up again for a second fly, but you will have already the touch of the air, because each day is different.
Okay, there we are. We've got a little bit of lift coming up this bowl. You can see the wind through the trees. So it's looking good. Oh, it's all good practice. Scratching around. A good flyer doesn't lose his cool in light conditions. The same pilot that can stay up in the light lift when everyone else is bombing out is usually the pilot who can get up, get high and go far in the strong stuff. Never let boredom make the decision for you. Stick with it. Be patient. Get in close. Keep searching. Even the top pilots get dispirited in light conditions.
Okay, I'm going to move on from here because that thermal's actually not very good. Wow, I got a crow going up in front of me really nicely. Here we go, where's our crow gone? Oh, he's just glided off now. Here comes the thermal. No? Come on! I'm up a bit there on the rocks. Superb!
But they stick with it until they hit the climb. Light lift often means little turbulence, so that's the ideal time to practice getting in close.
Yes, it's good, it's good.
Watch Jerome skillfully flying close to the cliffs. He's geared down, he's flying slower, making relaxed use of the light thermal.
Yes. I fly with a little brake.
Now watch him as he breaks away from the ridge to get into the lift and give himself space from the cliff. It's all quite weak, not the most inspirational. Here we go. So it's lastly 1, 2, 3, dropping into the bowl, taking it round to my left, round I go, nice and tight, so I know this lift is small. There's the core there. Nice one. Let the nose drop. Go back for it. So I'm doing figure eights. Now, I'm rising above the pinnacle here, which is brilliant because the thermal will be more defined and easier to fly in. So one more figure eight, and I reckon I'm going to have the room to do a 360 and really make the use out of the lift. Now I'm above the pinnacle. See how the thermal gets a little bit stronger, so it's more established. There it is. Strain up for a second, ease off the nose an inch, and then drop it round in my turn, using the dive to get it round. You see my brakes are only moving an inch. It's all about using the pitch movement of your wing. In order to be a good performance pilot, you have to understand and master the dynamics of your wing in pitch, yaw and roll, often converting the violent pitch movements in strong thermals to your advantage, to centre on the core and to get up faster.
So here I'm going back into the thermal. I'm going to really try and find the core now. And I'm slowing the glider down. It's giving myself my best sink rate. And squeeze, and just easing the outside up to let it turn round.
See, the core buffets you around. If you sort of dive around, pitching, diving, rolling, then your vario is sort of squealing all over the place. And you don't know whether you're in the core or just converting your dive energy into lift. So it's good to just keep smooth. Now, smooth doesn't mean flat. You can be a hard angle of bank, but just smooth. Keep it smooth. Keep the glider and you traveling nice and smooth. Don't be afraid to crank your turn into the core. At the same time, keep a smooth angle of bank by using the outside brake to keep the leading edge dissecting the horizon, and don't let it drop towards the ground. In small, strong cores, you should be able to turn right on your wingtip, again using the outside brake to monitor your leading edge. So we've got a good core here. Here we go, bank it around. Woohoo! Pitch it and rock it round. Don't let the nose drop too much. Keep the leading edge level with the horizon. Round you go. Nice, feel this smooth core. As long as you stay in the cores, you're absolutely fine. It's when you're nervous and you get tossed out of them that you're not. So I've lifted my outside, I've pulled the inside, I'm banking it round. I want to get this glider turning quite tightly in this core because it's not massive. And it's the first one I've hit all day to get up. The most common mistake I see people make is thermaling too broad. Don't circle tight enough. Thermals are actually relatively small beasts, and especially the core within that thermal can often be about the same size, if not smaller, than the tightest turn radius that we can make.
So in strong thermals, it's very important to have a quite aggressive piloting. If the thermal is 8 meters per second, then you have really to fight with your body to stay inside.
When you're cranked right in a core, your total radius can often fit inside the size of a tennis court. Hey! What we've got at the moment is cores ripping up the pinnacles down the side of the hill, but also reaching an inversion. So we've got quite turbulent air. But what you find is you get strong little thermals that punch up, then suddenly flatten out as they hit the ceiling, like smoke hitting a ceiling and spreading out. But by keeping the speed on, I cut through all that choppiness, that rough air, loading the wing with weight shift, and round I go. I'm trying to keep my hands steady. If the air's steady, then you have to try and keep steady. If the air's aggressive and bumpy, then you have to be a little bit more aggressive with the brakes to keep the glider flying smoothly. Always turn negative into positive. You know, if it's turbulent and you've got lots of diving action going on, then use that dive action and weight shift into the turn and really wham it round. So that way you can stay in cores or centre up better and you fly fast through the turbulence. If you were to fly sort of slow and nervously with minimal weight shift, then the glider becomes a bit more twitchy and you can sort of flat spin it. It's quite a turbulent one here, so I'm just keeping an eye on the glider, keeping the pressure. If you start getting stressed and you start freezing, then your performance goes downhill. That's when you can start making mistakes. Maybe you're doing nothing, maybe you're overcorrecting. So just relax. That's the most important thing. When you get scared, you have to mentally say to yourself, just relax. When I get scared, I say to myself, where's the lift? And that way I focus on something positive rather than negative. And the secret is to stick with the inversion and the climbs. Just be patient. Keep bouncing onto the roof, and eventually the inversion will break and your patience will be rewarded. You can see perhaps behind me the layer of milky cloud that is the inversion. We get through it, you'll suddenly notice the temperature gets cooler and the sky becomes an amazing blue, really electric deep blue instead of that hazy blue we get used to. Notice how the thermal is stronger, a little bit smoother, more pleasant. Yeah, you still have to crank it around sometimes, but smoother. Use this time to broaden your concentration and save your brain power. Your next stop is base, so relax and just enjoy the ride. Nice! Okay, it's going to be very strong. Good. A bit of turbulence as well. There we go, real screamer. Okay, getting close to base now. We just keep thermaling on the edge of it, where we know we can keep clear. Don't go right underneath the centre of a cloud, there's no point, really. So, you know, I'm at base now, and I'm on the edge. And I'm on the edge where I want to go, which is downwind, which is the best position to be in. So now I'm on the edge, I'm at base, I'm going to go.
After, what is very important is to anticipate where you will go, because if you decide where you will go when you are at cloud base, it's too late. You lose some time. When you leave the cloud base, then just decided to go to a point. So what would have drive you to go to this point is what time is it, the orientation of the slope, the general wind, and also every information that you can get. It can be the birds, it can be the trees, colors.
Now, we're going on our glide and we're going straight towards the next climb, which is another cumulus cloud. In deciding where to go to next, I ranked 3 sets of criteria in order of importance: signs, sources and triggers. So I'm looking downwind for a thermal within my glide. Here, the cumulus forming above Mendos is an obvious sign. But even if there were no cloud above it, it would still be a good objective, as the mountain acts as a trigger and the fields beneath it are acting as the source. If you looked at your logbooks, you'll probably notice that many of your cross-country flights end at the 20-kilometre mark. This is because you're not making the most out of your second climb. The key is arriving with the right attitude to make the most out of the lift you get. I left from the summit, just under cloud base, saw this cumulus here and just headed for it. It was a long, sinking glide, but when I got here, you get rewarded by a steady, smooth core. It's drifting me quite a lot along the slope still. The mountain is still very shallow, and the thermal is still stuck to the mountain and it's drifting up it. Soon it'll break and go more vertical, either when it releases from a trigger point off the mountain like a pinnacle, or when it hits cooler air and goes up more vertically. To help visualise the track of a thermal as it releases, imagine someone pinching a tablecloth and lifting it upwards. Everything at the edges is drawn into the centre as it continues to rise. So if you find yourself low and drifting, go with it, as it is usually taking you to the centre of the best lift. Do you remember earlier I said the thermal was drifting us? Now we've got more of a vertical component. Now it's just going straight up. I'm looking down at the ground. I can see we're hardly moving with reference to that, which means we're now in a perfect column of lift rather than a drifting thermal. Lovely. Even when you have found your thermal, it's quite easy to lose it again as it drifts. A great development with GPSs is the map page. If you have it zoomed in to 200 metres, then you can really see the instant trace resembling a telephone cord as it follows you in the thermal. So if you lose it, immediately fly back towards a telephone cord and re-centre on the lift again. Very steady, good climb here, so I'm just increasing a little bit of pressure on the inside, getting that tip down, all forces of balance. I'm centred in the core, just keep cruising round. Okay, just left that one. See here the area goes quiet for a bit, that's my edge. So I'll fly a little straighter for a second, away from that edge, and turn again. The secret of coring is flying away from the least lifty bit and always tightening up on the strongest. So whilst you're in the thermal, this is when you should relax and keeping an eye on what's going on next. Watching the flatlands already, seeing it develop, seeing cumulus forming, seeing shadows cast upon hills, all that sort of stuff, whilst I'm still climbing here. So although I'm giving my brain a chance to rest, I'm also going slightly broader in my concentration, having a little glance over, thinking, yeah, that'll do me. But if you just relax, you'll go on forever. Ever. Right, I'm going to go on my glide. So I'm looking out in the valley. I can see those cumulus clouds out there. So I know it's already working. That's it. No more complication. Cumulus clouds is working. Whether they're there on my glide or not, doesn't matter. They were there once, so they will be there again. So I just keep going.
Now, gliding efficiently is really important because you can lose everything on a glide. So choosing the right line to glide on is first and foremost the most important thing. And you do that by looking at your ground sources. And if you have other gliders in the air, you can use other gliders as well to choose your gliding line.
Sink and lift often extend like fingers lying parallel downwind. So if you find yourself on a more sinking glide, try weight shifting 20 to 30 degrees to your right or left, and you may find yourself in more buoyant air. Sailplanes use this technique, and so do paraglider pilots during competitions, where there are many pilots flying side by side. Again, on this glide I rank the signs, sources and triggers. The whole valley baking in the sun is a huge source, but I still have to predict where the thermal is going to release from. My objective now is the town, which is both source and a trigger. While on the glide though, if I see nearer signs of thermals, like smoke changing direction or birds going up, then I'll immediately divert and get altitude as soon as possible. Never ignore a sign, even if you've set yourself an objective which is a source or trigger.
When you do your transition to one point, sometimes it's good not to go direct to the point, depending on the wind, because the wind will increase close to the ground, so you will have to do like a curve to go a little bit in your transition first into wind, in which maybe you will use your speed bar.
A good example of maximising your glide on a transition is when you're crossing a valley. You know the valley wind will be stronger lower down, so while you are high, fly with a little weight shift diagonally across and slightly into wind. Then as you arrive lower on the other side, you can use the wind to drift you back onto the hill. What you don't want to be doing is struggling into wind on the other side of the valley crossing.
Speed bar is critical if you want to increase your speed through sync or often increase your glide upwind. But a speed bar that's used badly is worse than nothing at all. People make the mistake that they think, I've got a speed on, so I'll just have a little bit of brake just in case. And that's a bit like driving down the motorway with your handbrake on. You either want to go fast or not. You squeeze it on gently, nice and smooth. As it pitches down and then comes back up again, squeeze on the last bit so that it gently flattens out. The glider does the work for you. You control the pitch through your feet, and it's more efficient and you get no deflations.
Now, when you're gliding on your speed bar, the way I control the pitch and the way I feel the pressure in the glider is by using my rear risers. Here, I take hold of them, I hold them up by the mailon, and I just put the weight of my arms so I can feel the tension in my rear lines. That way I have some feeling I have control on the glider, but I'm not actually pulling on the brakes, which is creating me drag. You never use the same sort of pressure on your risers as you would your brakes, but you can affect the pitch of the glider by gently pulling on your risers.
That way your glider has a chance to build up the pitch and stabilise its glide. It's a lot more efficient. I can see the air rushing up my trousers. Johnny Fart Pants, away!
The Fatlands fly learn you to more take the colors of the ground, watch the clouds, watch the birds, and it's secured to do cross-country fly in Fatland because you can land everywhere. So it's a good way to begin cross-country and to go in the Fatlands.
As we've got lower, I can feel the temperature increasing and the thermals are slower. I've got one now. It's nice and steady. I'll turn.
Many pilots feel exposed when they're flying over the flatlands because they worry about bombing out. Cast away that concern and focus on the positive, the open space, the altitude, your options. Look for the clouds and be decisive. If you pile on too much pressure, your performance will go down just when you need it the most.
I've got to change my style of flying now. I'm lower. There we go. You can almost fall asleep in this sort of stuff. Just drifting around, fall asleep. Why not? It's so smooth. And the mistake people make is that they go from flying at cloud base or high and the thermals are strong and rough, whoa, and they're dealing with all that. And then suddenly they leave cloud base, all the noise and the pitching and diving, they're still sort of hyped up from that adrenaline pumped flight. They come into the valley And all you've got is this quiet, gentle, smooth lift. And because they're still doing all that muck, they find this lift, they think, oh, this isn't good, this is rubbish, there's more around. And they leave it. But if you gear down, chill yourself out, drink your water, relax, fall asleep, you'll be able to use this stuff and go further. When you're flying in thermals and turbulent air, it's always good to fly a safe glider at 100% than a quite high performance one at 60%. Now, the harness plays a really crucial part to the stability and handling of a wing. 42 centimeters is that, from my elbow to my fingers. 42 is the harness setting all gliders are tested with. So, when you have a deflation, I'll just do one now. Have a deflation, lean into it, recovers 90 degrees, okay? That's at 42 centimeters of separation. I'm going to loosen us right off and make the harness really wide, which means there's going to be big movement of weight when it deflates. Same deflation, same leaning in as before, and it goes to 180 degrees. There's no point flying a safe glider with a dangerous harness setting like that because it changes the characteristics. Having a wide spacing is good if you want to feel the glider, but not good if you want more security. So it's your choice, but you've got to make a good calculated one.
Alternatively, close mailons can encourage your risers to twist more and can lock you into a spiral dive. In addition, it can desensitize your feeling of the wing, which can delay your response time to turbulence and deflations.
Okay, as the design of paragliders have evolved, we've got gliders that now fly at a really beautiful glide rate, very flat. But one vice they do have is that when you do a symmetric tuck, they hover a little bit before they dive. Now you've got to let the glider hover and then dive, because if you don't, if you break it whilst it's still hovering, you'll go into a stall. Okay, I'll do a symmetric collapse, so front risers, bang, there, hover, gently dive, okay? So whilst it's still quiet, resist that temptation to break it. Always remember, if it's quiet, keep your hands up. When it's noisy, you can start squeezing on the brakes.
Here is a good example of the glider hovering back in a semi-deep stall. It is important to give it time, keep your hands up and trust the glider, and allow it to then spontaneously recover itself, breaking the dive if you need to. Too much brake at the wrong time will cause the glider to start to drop back into a stall. If you let go now, then the dive will be more violent, leading to a huge symmetric tuck, or worse, you falling into the wing. So you must break the dive if it's a big surge. Similarly, with an asymmetric tuck, it is important not to overreact. Too much input when the glider's not started to turn into the tuck can cause the glider to spin.
If your glider goes into really bad spin, the important thing is if you can see the ground, then you can release the brakes. I'll just do a full spin, okay, round I go, and when I see the ground there, I just release the brakes, it'll continue around in a spin, pull straight out. Now, that's all because I released the glider when it was in front of me. If I were to release the glider when it was behind, then it would be a different story. Big dive, big collapse, change of direction, twist. So the secret is just not to overreact. Don't fight the brakes, just provide resistance and keep it smooth. So I'm just going to go into a spin and I'll release it when it's in front of me. So barrier it down, round I go, it's in front of me, so release the brakes, Whoop, bit of a dive on that one. Check the dive. That's a chummier one.
It's also good to know your glider's point of spin so that it keeps you safe in strong thermals and maximises your performance in cores. Watch Russell demonstrate.
Now, to find the point of spin when you're flying and you're thermaling, you can just push the brake hard like that, and then as soon as it starts to rotate, that's when you put your hand up again and you continue your circle. And if you know that point of spin, that's the point of spin in strong thermic conditions that you can avoid going too close to. But you do need to find that limit so that you can turn nice and tightly in the thermals.
Okay, another thing that's happened when a glider is rotating to one side, you very quickly have a twist. Twisting isn't good. You should always try to prevent the twist, because when it twists once, that's it. If the glider isn't recovering in the first 360 or so, then it'll just continue going round. To avoid twists, one, sit up so that your body's in between the risers and you're moving with the risers as the glider moves. And if you see a twist, then block it. Block it with your arms, get yourself back quick. And that holds you solid with the glider, moves you with the glider, and also stops any more twists coming in. So if you see a twist, oh, I've done a stall, I'm twisting, grab it, pull it apart, settle yourself down, and then get on the controls and fly away. Now, to kick out a twist is very easy. I'll just do a few twists, block that like that. My arms become my risers. Once I've stopped the twists, the glider's back to normal, then I'll start kicking it out. To kick it out, you just do big scissor kicks and untwist yourself. Once it goes round, you see how quickly it goes the minute it's allowed to be freed. In a moment, you're going to see some of the Ozone boys doing some amazing acro moves. But before you even consider doing acro, you have to be able to recover from it if it goes wrong.
For example, the stall is used a lot to recover from a spin or a sat that goes badly wrong. It's a manoeuvre you should be able to perform with complete confidence. So when I switch to a new glider, I'll stall it to build up my confidence in the wing and also my ability to recover it. The full stall can be disconcerting because there is a period of perceived weightlessness during which the pilot falls backwards. Watch how Jerome's upper body goes from vertical to past the horizontal as the wing goes into full stall. It's important to keep your head straight, your piloting active. The wing will thrash around, so keep your arms engaged and don't let the forces snatch the controls away from you. Done correctly, you can lose as little as 40 metres from start to finish and have a descent rate of only 6 metres per second. The wing may also turn, as it does here in the example. But don't worry about this. It should not affect your smooth release and control of the dive.
Now, to stall, it's very easy. All you do is make sure you're sitting upright as much as you can, and you're nice and tight in your harness, and you bury the brakes and stall it. When it becomes above your head, you then ease the brakes off, shirk that dive as it comes, and fly away. So I just demonstrate. Bury the brakes, back I go. Comes above me, just gently ease off and fly as normal, and it recovers. Now, if it gets a little cravat in, or a little tip cravat like that, all you do is go to the stabilizer line, give it a little tug, okay? So it's nice to check you know where the stabilizer line is, because it's not always on the front. It's often on the B riser going to the tip. Sometimes a different colour, but it's good to check, okay? One tug on the stabilizer line gets a cravat out.
Have a look at this sat that went wrong. Too much brake induced a spin. The pilot stalls his way out, but you can see the right wingtip has a small cravat, which could lead to a spiral. So all he does is tug on the stabilizer line and it pops out.
So unless you're prepared to be able to stall a wing, don't start thinking about doing acro.
Here, Russell demonstrates a great stall recovery from a helicopter that went wrong.
Keep our legs tucked in, keep it going round. As soon as it goes off there, I stop by stalling, hold the glider in a stall,
let it stabilise and fly away.
Don't be indecisive, okay? When you decided to stall it, you're going to stall it. But once you've locked your arms on and you fall back, the glider reappears, then begin the easing up of the process and check that dive as it comes. So you just bury the brakes like that, it goes back, comes above my head, and I start easing the brakes up, let it dive a touch, and fly. Right, well, we're going to sign off from here. You've learned your thermaling, you've learned a bit more about SIV. Now we're going to hand you to the boys in Annecy. We're going to show you some excellent manoeuvres and how to acro properly. I'm going to have a little play at a sat. Whoops, bent the arm.
The acro you're about to see is performed by factory pilots with thousands of hours. Always practice acro over the water with appropriate rescue equipment and under the fully qualified supervision of an experienced instructor. Always practice acro suitable to your health and level of experience. Now enjoy. Unlike most flying, acro can put your body through high Gs. Your wing could be flying at 4 times the trim speed in violent bursts. So before you try it, be honest with yourself. Are you one of those few who can make the right inputs in split-second timing and under high pressure? To master it, it takes skill and commitment, and with some people, even that's not enough. I've been flying for years, and you won't catch me doing tumbles. I'm more than happy to leave it to those experts up there.
Hello guys, perfect condition in Annecy. I'm Jérôme. I'm working with a test team pilot in a ozone glider. And today we are with Tonio, Antoine Boisselier, Alexis Coudurier, Jimmy Hall, Matt Gerdes, Jockey Sanderson for some maneuvers, some acro maneuvers.
For acrobatic maneuvers, it's necessary to learn step by step. For example, the basic maneuver, wing over, deep stall, pitch, and use completely the brake range when you fly.
Now we start with the sub wing over.
Wingovers are the foundation of all acro moves and are a real art. It's all about timing of weight shift and brake. For me, a real accurate gauge of how skillful a pilot is seeing how well they can do wingovers, elegantly switching sides and keeping the glider inflated and positive throughout. When you're learning, it's a bit like rubbing your stomach and patting your head at the same time. But when you get it, it really does click.
I think the main maneuvers to learn the glider to start will be the wingovers first. I think it's the base, because the pendulum is really important.
I work for wingover with my view. Okay, I start with a wave shift and view to the right, and I brake to the right. I release, I look to the left, wave shift to the left, brake to the left. I release, I have speed, I use the brake. I release, I have speed, I look the way. I have speed, I use the brake. I have speed, I use the brake, and now I brake the both brakes.
Notice how Jerome pulls a subtle and consistent amount of outside brake simultaneously to the inside brake. His weight shift is noticeable, but not exaggerated. He flies huge, controlled wingovers with precise and well-timed brake input.
For me, the key of a wingover is getting the entry right. Your first wingover is really important. If you cock up the first part, if you make a mess of that, then that messes up the rest of your wingovers. So go for your wingovers, really positive, really confident from the first one. So I'm going to bang it in, let it dive at the ground, and then come the other way. And again, weight shift nice and early, over, and again. That's good.
brakes, opposite brakes, when I feel a lot of weight in my harness. It means a lot of speed, and it's okay to use the brakes. If I feel when my body go up, when I feel less power, I don't use my brake because I miss. There is not enough speed, not enough energy, and it's no good. The risk is collapse.
One of the major breakthroughs that I had in acro flying was probably just nailing wingovers. And I learned them from Rob Whittall a few years ago, and it was a major breakthrough because when you get wingovers to the point where each one is almost as big as a loop, then you've got the weight shift and the transitions nailed, and you understand exactly how much brake you need, and it's a lot more outside brake than most people realize to keep the wing open and to really get them big.
You have to use all the brake flash, in thermals, in piloting, in acrobatic maneuvers, and for me the majority of the pilot use perhaps just 30% of the brake flash.
I think wingovers is the most important part. It's like the backbone of so many tricks, and unless you can really link together wingovers and not just, back and forth, but nice high ones beyond 90 degrees, that's when you're ready to progress and move on to other things like looping or anything else. But until you've got the wingovers down, that's what you should be doing. And they're so fun to do. I mean, you never get tired doing wingovers.
The asymmetric 360 is technically easier than the wingover because you're not changing direction, but like wingovers, it gives you an understanding of weight shift and brake timing. This manoeuvre focuses on speed. Paragliders don't have throttles, so the only way we can increase our speed and give us energy to do loops, etc., is to build up on that dive moment. Imagine in a wingover, at the point where you would switch sides. With an asymmetric 360, this is the point you center your weight, fly straight. During the dive, you reapply the same brake, same weight shift, and accelerate into the turn again. As you go over, you center up again and repeat, perfecting your control. This is a great way of getting used to being above the wing like a loop, but without the associated risks.
Okay, for the 360 asymmetric, I start with wing over, 2 or 3 wing over, and after a wing I go on the same side with asymmetric 360. Okay, I start to the right for the wing over, I release, look, weight shift, brake, I release, look, weight shift, brake, I release, I had to go on the same side, I release, flat in my harness, flat in my harness, flight in my harness, flight in my harness, I go out, I wait slowly for a straight fly.
Don't underestimate these manoeuvres. It's crucial you practice the wingover and asymmetric 360 until you are completely happy with your control and timing before moving on to more extreme manoeuvres like loops.
Now we can see a lot of images of acrobatic, and perhaps a lot of pilots feel it's very easy. No, it's easy because the pilot, you can see there are a lot of practices before. If you go directly looping, it's mistake, it's easy to do. And a mistake in acro, perhaps it's a catastrophic mistake.
Now you've mastered the timing and control of an asymmetric 360, you can start thinking about looping. To get it right, you need positive weight shift and braking, but above all, you need commitment, because with the loop, He who hesitates is lost. It is all about recognizing the point at which you have enough speed to switch all your energy from one direction to another and hold that position all the way over.
Now we go on with a looping. I start with 3 wing over, I go on with 360 asymmetric, and I make an opposite turn, an opposite wing over, it's a looping. For that I need speed. Wing over on the left, right, wing over to the left, wing over to the right, I go on with the 360, asymmetric, speed, I reverse. I go out to the left. 360. Before looping to the right. Good. And I release slowly. Stable.
So it's really important to visualize it even before you can try the maneuver. It's really important to watch other people doing it, to watch videos with other pilots, to see what they feel, how they do it, and just like this you can build the experience.
You can enter loops through wingovers, but it's best to do it from an asymmetric 360 as you have more speed. Looping is great fun, but if you do hesitate during the switch into the loop, or you don't have enough brake or weight shift, then the glider can lose energy and collapse. Fortunately, although it may look bad, you should still have enough energy in the roll around the wing to avoid falling into the sail. But if it does start to collapse or lose energy, you must stop thinking about continuing with another loop and focus on getting the wind back to normal flight. Created by Raul Rodriguez, the SAT is a blend of a spin and a spiral, where the centre of forces are between the glider and the pilot, and the glider starts to spin, yet remains positive through the roll bank. This gives the SAT its unique trademark of the pilot flying backwards and the glider floating in a rotation. Although they look quite floaty, there is a lot of G, especially in the dynamic SAT.
The key to a SAT is your body position when you start the SAT. It's best to have no brake in your left hand so that you hold your risers. You don't need to push your risers for the SAT. The fact that you're holding the riser there is just to lock your arm to keep your weight shift in, because when you enter the SAT, everything wants to throw your weight shift away. If your weight shift gets thrown away from the SAT, then you'll find that you have a very fast rotational spirally type SAT. If you can keep your weight shift in the SAT, that can slow the rotation of the SAT. So that's why we hold our arm like that. We don't need to push the riser to make it actually SAT.
There are many variations of the SAT. The best way to learn is from a progressive SAT entry, where you do a 360, and at the point when the glider drops into the accelerated turn, you apply a lot more inside brake, as if you're trying to spin it but not quite, holding your outside arm on the outer risers to stop yourself from being pushed out of the turn. You see here, Jerome's got his inside brake and weight shift locked on, and the glider's going around in a smooth rotation. Once you're in a SAT, then you'll know because of the feeling of flying backwards. When you want to exit, simply ease up with the initiating brake, center your weight, and bleed out the energy. Normally, once pilots have perfected the progressive entry, then they usually prefer to enter from a 90-degree turn, as it's much faster.
Now, Jerome showed you how to do the standard entry SAT from a 360. I have another method, and that's just by using the energy and dive, not of a wing over, but just by a jink the opposite direction. So we just do it from a left-hand turn first. I come off, I hold my risers, now I go right. Once it's facing the ground, now I pull more. And there it is, in the sat. Now, once you've got it in the sat, you can control it by using more and more brake on the inside. The more brake you use, the slower the rotation. Obviously, you've got to be careful that you don't spin the glider. If you spin the glider when it's in the sat, it's called a coconut. Now, to release, I ease off the inside, a little bit of outside, and I come out of my spiral. Nice and smooth. The key to doing nice sats, I believe, is to be nice and smooth with the entry.
As you improve your technique, you can try more exciting variations, like the dynamic or rhythmic sat, from different styles of entry as well. It is all about what point you initiate the manoeuvre and what you do once you're in it. Jerome is going to demonstrate, but notice his hand and body positions.
You know progressive sat, and you know also 360 asymmetric. We can make the both in the same times. I start with 360 asymmetric, and I go in a sat, and it's a dynamic sat. Okay, I go now in a 360 in the right, asymmetric. I'll release. Okay. One more. Okay, and now I go in a sat. Yes. It's too violent. I drop the bar. You see, it's more violent. See you.
I'm just doing a dynamic sat from a wing over, and then another asymmetric sat from an offset spiral. See if we can show you the difference. So it's just a left-hand turn, followed by a weight shift, right, get the glider pointing at the ground, and now go again. And there it goes, statting. Come out of that. Okay, so I'm going to turn this to an offset spiral. That's good. Okay, dynamic sat. Play. Water. Good.
With the sat, there are only two things that can really go wrong. Either pulling too much brake and spinning it, or not enough brake and going into a spiral.
Now if I go too strong in my brake, I go in a spin. And I go in a spin. Too much. In a spin, I release. Okay, with a big pitch.
Our next manoeuvre requires a completely different mindset. To master it, you need finesse and great sensitivity. Too heavy-handed, and you'll need to stall it out. The most important thing to master before you do a helicopter is the deep stall or parachutal point. Once you can recognize this point and can hold the glider in for a while, then you can start to initiate a spin, keeping the glider fully inflated and stable in a rotation on its yaw axis. Just watch Antonio as he does a perfect helicopter. Notice his body position and his hands. He's staying perfectly with the glider as it rotates on its yaw axis. Doing a helicopter and keeping it in a stable rotation is a very subtle art, and it's a very fine adjustment on the inside brake. To smooth the exit from the helicopter, simply bring down the outer brake so that it's level with the initiating brake. And then when it's hovering in a deep stall, ease off both brakes and check the dive. Don't hesitate at this point. The glider is very sensitive and yet dynamic.
Okay, the best way for me to do an helicopter, it's first to understand and to know the deep stall stable with not a lot of brakes. Go inside the deep stall and release and keep the deep stall. First thing. After, keep very flat in your harness, flat position. And after, to use the brake in the size what you want, the right for example, and try to go in the best flat rotation.
Okay, for an helicopter, I keep point. Okay, I have. Okay, it's stable. I have a little pressure in my right brake, and I have very stable in my harness. There is a little unstable. I go out. Big pitch. For the go out, during the helicopter, I have a little brake in the right hand and close nothing in the left. To go out, I go in a symmetric position with a little brake, and the glider stops the rotation, and I have in the deep stall, and I go up of the deep stall.
Here we see Jimmy and Jerome doing some lovely examples of helicopters. Notice how the pilots stay underneath the wing and there's very little roll oscillation. What can go wrong? If the glider starts to oscillate off its yaw axis, then it's time to recover it straight away. Because if you hold on the oscillation, then it can get worse. Here's a good example of a helicopter going off the yaw axis and start to oscillate. You can see Jerome recognises this point, starts braking the glider so that it starts to drop back into a stall, then eases off and brakes the dive.
Go to parachutage. There's parachutage, just come off. Now get it rotating, keep my hands off. Okay, now I'm going to stop it, just stall it, hold it in the stall, ease out. Woohoo! Loving the heavy.
Okay, I try another. Okay, very stable. I go out now. The main problem for the exit of helicopter is le regard, the view. If you look the glider, the problem if you lose your reaper, you have to go down your eyes, your view, to see very far away, to have a contact with the ground.
We have shown you the foundation moves of acro. With much more practice and experience, you may be able to take this further and do thrilling manoeuvres that are even more dynamic and require great skill, like this tumble that Antonio is demonstrating. Antonio holds his position perfectly and keeps the power on all the way over. It takes years to get this far, but only a nanosecond to get it wrong.
Yeah, for me it was not a fantastic tumble at all. It was one of the worst for me, even if it went quite good at the beginning, but then I was kind of out of control because I lose the lucidity, because I should have said, okay, I stop now. And with this kind of maneuver, with this tumble, you have just a very short timing to stop the maneuver safely. Otherwise, you have lots of chance to fall into the glider or in the lines, and that's what happened to me. And I was lucky with the opening and everything, with the rescue was alright, but it can be very dangerous.
After throwing both his reserves, Antonio managed to land safely in amongst a family barbecue.
To me, acro would not be fun if there was no fear. If it didn't give you a rush to do it, if you could go up there and flip over your glider and just ho-hum, fear is just part of the game. You deal with it, and some of us like it. I kind of like scared myself, I guess, or I wouldn't do it.
My favorite maneuver is the tumbling. It's the strongest feeling. Just go above the glider and
On his second flight, Antonio didn't get caught out again. After several perfect tumbles, you can see he notices the glider losing energy, so he slams on the brakes and controls the surge perfectly. After watching this film, please don't think that acro is a piece of cake. These pilots have great skill and have been practicing for years, and as a result of their dedication, they are fortunate enough to become professional. We are all individuals, and we all have different ways of taking in information, practicing, and then turning it into perfection. So it is important for you to progress through acro at a pace that is comfortable for you, and only move on to the more extreme maneuvers when you have mastered each stage and you can genuinely visualize all aspects of the intended maneuvers. But the most important thing with all aspects of flying, whether it's thermaling or acro, is to practice. Dedication and airtime makes you instinctive and gives you reflexes that keep you safe and can turn you into a great pilot. We hope you've enjoyed watching this film, and if it makes one pilot safer and all of you want to go out there and improve your skills, then that is our reward. I think the best thing about paragliding is that it's such a small, close-knit community that even the top guys are approachable. So don't be afraid to ask and learn and make the most out of this great sport. We've distilled 20 years of experience into just 70 minutes, so please use this film as a reference and come back to it from time to time, and you'll be surprised at what you pick up each time you watch it.